When you're watching The Hitman's Bodyguard, this is one of those perfect popcorn movies. You know what I'm saying? One of those movies that you just go to the theater and you know what you're getting and you know it's going to be just fun. You know what I'm saying? It's not like a gigantic blockbuster film. You know what I'm saying? Like there are certain popcorn films or certain blockbuster films that come out and you're just kind of like, I'm not really interested in seeing that. It's like, what can I compare it to? I don't know. Let's just keep it in the blockbuster range. Like this is like a smaller blockbuster film, but it's one of those perfect popcorn movies. I honestly don't know how to phrase it any better. Is it the best? Is it like the greatest, most thought provoking movie that I've ever seen, or that like you'll ever watch? Probably not. You know what I'm saying? But it's fun. It's got a good cast. You know, an amazing cast that knows what they're doing. They like play their characters perfectly, and it kind of fits in like the whole quote unquote genre, or kind of like the idea of the actors. So like, you know how Dwayne The Rock Johnson will play like the same character over and over and over again, right? Like he'll just play himself in the movie. You know what I'm saying? In this movie, you kind of get that same feel from all of the actors, but like they dial it up to 11. So Samuel L. Jackson's in the movie. He's great. Ryan Reynolds is in the movie. He's fantastic. Salma Hayek, Gary Oldman, Elodie Young, who's fantastic. She was Elektra in Daredevil. She's great. She's great in the movie. So Samuel L. Jackson, you're gonna get him saying, you know, he's saying every single swear word in the book. And they got Ryan Reynolds being like kind of like the, you know, quote unquote main guy, the nice, good, happy fellow, but then he's kind of like down on his luck, and it just kind of feels like a whole. It fits his. It fits him perfectly. This character, Salma Hayek, she plays a fun character in this one. She's so crazy and she's so wild and she's so. She's definitely like the one that I'm like, oh yeah, they had to give her the R rating for this. You know what I mean? But she was great in the movie as well. Gary Oldman, I mean, he plays the villain, and I guess that's one of the. I mean, you can make a lot of critiques about this movie, but I think one of the reasons it's probably not like everybody's. What's the right word? It's not like his villain, or you know, the character that he portrays, the bad guy, isn't like what we expect or what we want now, which is like, I want to understand why the bad guy is the bad guy. You know what I mean? It's like, why is he evil? Why is he this or that? And it's just like, no, he's just evil to be evil. He's just a tyrant who does whatever he wants and doesn't want to get caught, get in trouble or whatever. So I guess there's plenty of criticism to give this movie. I'm not saying it's like, you know, a 10 out of 10, but it is a really good popcorn movie. And by popcorn movie, it's just one of those like kind of special action movies that you know, that kind of like buddy cop movie where it's like you don't like the people don't like each other, but they have to stick it out. And that's what this really reflects of the time. And honestly, you could take this movie and put it into the time period where it's like, you know, the two cops who hate each other, but they have to work together. Like you could fit that in like the 90s or the 2000 era of movies, and this movie would sit perfectly amongst all of those other movies. Remember, oh my goodness, do you guys remember like in the 90s and the 2000s when there was like a heavy European like push? Does that make sense? Like, and every single, like, if you go back and you watch like movies in the 90s or the 2000s, it's like it felt like all that they could do was like, we have to go to Europe, we got to go to Italy, or we have to go to like London, or you know what I mean? They always figure out a ways, like in Mission Impossible 3, they're kind of like, we gotta break into the Vatican. We gotta go to Europe and go traveling abroad. And then you know, in another movie, I'm trying to remember. Hopefully I don't got it wrong. Mission Impossible was like early 2000s, right? And then something like the Da Vinci Code. It was like is in Paris. You know what I mean? At the Louvre or Louvre. I forget how to pronounce it. All right, but you get what I'm saying. It's like it's in Europe and they're heavily centered there. And this movie also takes place in Europe. So kind of fitting into that style, it kind of just made a lot of sense for me. And I thought it was really fun, the movie. All right, let me talk about some of the before I get to the good stuff. Maybe let me get some of the bad stuff out of the way. I mean, it's a popcorn movie, so it's kind of like, you know, the plot isn't. The plot is fine. I don't have a problem with the plot. I think what gets me the most, it has to be. I mean, there's certain things that I don't like because it's like it's unrealistic, but then I'm like, but that's the movie, you know what I mean? It's like that's the fun part about it. It's like this wouldn't happen in real life, and you know, obviously it's a movie, so just like have fun with it, you know what I'm saying? But like, okay, if we want to be specific with it, it's like there's a point in the movie where Samuel L. Jackson, Darius Kincaid, right? He's on a boat and he's like driving away from the bad guys trying to kill him. And you would think that like he's out there on his own on a boat. He's standing up, right? Back is turned to the bad guys and they're shooting at him from the sides, okay? Now they show him like ducking and hiding, but like he's obviously like wide open, you know? But they show the bullets hitting the boat just on the sides of where he is. So they miss like a whole bunch. Now you could chalk that up to the character, like, you know what I mean? In the movie, he's like, he's an assassin, but he's an unkillable assassin. He can't die. You know what I'm saying? That's the gag. That's the joke. And I think that works very well for the genre, for his character as well. And so I was kind of like, my whole idea was that like, I feel like they could have done it in a smarter way, you know what I mean? But it just kind of is just like, dude, he's wide open on a boat and they're hitting the sides of the boat, but they're not actually hitting him. I just thought that was like, all right, we can nitpick that. And then obviously when I was like younger, I never really thought about the stuntmen. I never thought about like the stunt people working behind the scenes, but now, because everybody's so vocal and so passionate and so like aware of them, like people who I was watching people like talking about how like, oh, that they switched the stuntman, or they like talk about how like the camera moves and doing certain shots. It's like, oh, you can see that they did this like this, and then they had somebody behind the camera moving, and it's just like it kind of. Now I'm self-aware about like the stuntman and them being in the movie. So when I see that they do like a crazy stunt that the actor could never do, and I'm like, oh yeah, they put the stunt double in there. So there's plenty of times in the movie where I was watching it where I was like, Samuel L. Jackson didn't do that jump. Like he didn't do that jump. Like he does a jump down and shoot. So he jumps off of a stairway, and then you shoot somebody in the face, and then he pops right up as Samuel L. Jackson. I was like, that's not him. You know what I mean? Obviously. And then there was another part with Ryan Reynolds where he was riding a motorcycle and he has the helmet on. Now, it could very well have been Ryan Reynolds. You know what I mean? I don't know if he has a motorcycle license or not, but it just felt like, yeah, they got a stuntman up there. And then all he had to do was... at the end of it, all he had to do was raise up the what's it called, the helmet, or like, you know, the little like the glasses part of it, where he just like kind of slides it up and it reveals his face, like, you know what I mean? Otherwise, he would have ridden on the bike without the helmet. You know what I'm saying? So it just kind of was like, oh yeah, that was a stuntman, and then he comes in. And then it's him underneath it was him the whole time, you know what I mean? That's the other critique. And then obviously like the villain is just like evil to be evil, you know? But other than that, outside of that, the comedy is hilarious. Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson have amazing chemistry. They do so well they work so well together in this. Their characters are so different, and it creates an interesting dynamic between them, and especially because they hate each other, and especially because they have so much inner tension with one another. Their fight scenes and the choreography between them is really good. There's a moment where they're like fighting each other, and they're constantly pulling out guns, and Ryan Reynolds is like blocking him and keeping him away, and then he kicks Samuel L. Jackson because he got shot in the leg, and then they point both of their guns at Elodie Young, who is like Ryan Reynolds' girlfriend in the movie, and then Ryan Reynolds is like shocked that like she almost got shot, and then he's like puts the gun away from her, and then he kind of like gets rid of all of the bullets in the mag from one of his pistols, and then they kind of have like this cool little standoff fight. I mean, just so many great moments in this movie, so many fun moments, and the action seems real, it seems well rehearsed, it seems realistic and fun. Like, there's another part in the movie. Oh my gosh, this is so funny. All right, so when you're watching this movie, just think to yourself like, oh my gosh, imagine if the actors actually did this. I mean, it's so funny to think about. But so Darius gets the idea. They're stuck on the roof of a building. Darius Kincaid and Michael Bryce, Ryan Reynolds' character, they're stuck on a roof. And they're like, how are we going to escape from this? How are we going to get out of this? You know what I mean? We have Interpol and the police on our ass. We got to figure out how do we get away from this? And Ryan Reynolds is looking down at like a trash can or like some sort of spot where he can like escape. He's trying to like overthink it. And then Samuel L. Jackson, he just jumps off of the building, and I guess he tries to like hold on to the wall, and you're just like, oh damn, you know what I mean? And you just see him flop onto the trash can or whatnot, and then Ryan Reynolds is like, oh my gosh, what the? And so he essentially, Samuel L. Jackson just does it the hard way. He jumps and he goes for it, and Ryan Reynolds is like, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take the stairs. You know what I mean? I'm going to take the safe way. I'm going to figure out another way down that doesn't involve me jumping. Stuff like that. The comedy, the physical humor in the movie is so funny, and it works so well. And then obviously their character dynamic and their, the way that they approach things. Like there's another part where, Darius is a killer. Michael Bryce he's a bodyguard. He's supposed to help people, protect people. You can look at it as like Samuel L. Jackson's character is like in the kind of the bad way of things is like he kills people for a living. And then you look at Ryan Reynolds, he's like, he has to hurt people so he can save his client, save somebody that he wants to protect. So you kind of look at him with like, he's more of like a light gray, you know what I mean? He's more of like he has a shade of gray to him, but it's not as bad as what Darius does in the movie. So they get picked up by nuns because they need to make it somewhere, and you see Ryan Reynolds just like having an awful time with the nuns and whatnot. And you see Samuel L. Jackson just like having a ball, having a good time, singing, laughing, making jokes, you know what I mean? Everybody's like, they like him and they don't like Ryan Reynolds, and they just don't understand the situation. Is like, Ryan Reynolds is the good guy. He's the ethically correct, quote unquote, ethically correct person in this scenario. And then Samuel L. Jackson's like this messed up killer, but he gets along with the nuns. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's all about personality, and it comes through the screen so well, and it makes it just so enjoyable to watch that you kind of forget all of the other stuff. And then, then there's also Salma Hayek, who's fantastic. I think, she spends a majority of the movie in jail, but the time that we do see her on screen, action-wise, with Samuel L. Jackson is like how they come together, how they, get married or become a couple. And it's kind of a very important connection in the movie, because it's just like, it's a prime example of like why, when we see like action movies, why there's always kind of like a romantic subplot. It's like, yeah, well, without the guns and the bullets, like what joy is there? What fun is there? It's like, I think Samuel L. Jackson puts it the best in the movie. He's like, who cares about the guns and the bullets if I can't tell Sonia about it? If I can't tell the one person who I really love, like, you know what I mean? Like, what does it really matter if I can survive and do all this crazy stuff if I can't tell her about it at the end of the day? And so, when I usually watch another movie, I'll reference it again, or I'll talk about it, is like in the Mission Impossible, like in Mission Impossible 3, like I wasn't all that interested in the romance. I was just kind of like, all of a sudden he has this new fiance, this new wife, and it just kind of seems really fast and up, out of nowhere, and it doesn't feel like a real connection or whatnot. And then in the next movie, they just get rid of that whole thing. So it just kind of didn't fit for me. I was just kind of like, whatever. They just throw romance in there just to throw it in there. But I think it's just like, for people like, quote, like Ethan Hunt in the IMF, it's like, who cares? You know what I mean? It's like, he can shoot a gun perfectly, and he can run 10 miles super quickly, super fast, and he can fly a helicopter, and he can do the impossible. But none of that means anything if he can't go home at the end of the day and tell his girl. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of like that message of the movie, and kind of like how I can attach that to every action movie where there's like a quick romantic love connection, and just like doesn't feel perfect, but it does at the same time. It's just like, that's the, it's kind of their way of coping or like enjoying themselves. It's like they need somebody, that makes sense. But finally, throughout the whole movie, we see like this love-hate relationship, well, mostly hate relationship between Darius and Michael, and we see how they interact with each other. And kind of throughout the whole thing, you're thinking to yourself like, well, one thing has to lead to another. They have to be there for each other. They're gonna have to fight for one another. And there's a moment in the movie that I feel like is so. There's a lot of payoff in this movie. Like, Ryan Reynolds says that he never had to take a bullet for one of his clients that he was a bodyguard for. And Samuel L. Jackson was like, well, I need you to give me that full service treatment, like AAA rated. It's like the extra A stands for S, yours between mine. And I so funny. It makes so much sense. And then later in the movie, bam, they try to kill Samuel L. Jackson, and Ryan Reynolds jumps in between and gets shot protecting Samuel L. Jackson. And then, Samuel L. Jackson kills Gary Oldman, and the whole movie. And then the music. The music was great in this movie. Samuel L. Jackson sings his own song in this. You know what I mean? How funny is that? Just stuff like that. The little touches of comedy. That's what makes it so hilarious. That's what makes it so good. It's the situation. It's like, who would have thought that an assassin would need a hitman would need a bodyguard? You know what I mean? He's a hitman, but given the situation, it flows. It feels right, and it's very fun. And I remember the first time I watched this movie, and I was immediately like, right off the bat when I watched it, I was like, this is comedy gold. This is such a great popcorn movie. And I watch it every now and again because it's just so hilarious. And they have some great action sequences, like Ryan Reynolds is fighting like this gigantic dude, and he hits him with an axe, and the axe doesn't stop him. And then he like tries to choke him, and that doesn't stop him. And then he hits him in the head with like a nail, and that doesn't work. And he's just trying all these different things to beat him, and it just like seems impossible. He's unkillable as well. And so eventually chains him up around the neck, like hanging him with a chain, and he's choking the life out of him. And the guy's like struggling to get out of the chain, out of the hanging. And so Ryan Reynolds is like talking to an employee at the store that they're fighting in, because it's like a hardware store. That's where they got like the nail gun and the axe and like a hammer and all this other stuff. Like that's where they get it. And so he sees a gun on the floor, and you know how like the character will kind of struggle to reach for the gun, and then at the last second grab the gun and then shoot the bad guy or whatever. Well, in this certain scenario, he's like asking the guy who's working at the store, at the hardware store, witnessing all of this. He's kind of like, pass me the gun. And then the guy's like, I don't know who to trust in this moment. Who's the good guy, right? Like, who can I really trust? And then he's just like, no. He shakes his head. He's like, no. And then he's like, yes. Ryan Reynolds looking at him with like this evil in his eyes, red face. He's like struggling to keep it together, and he's just like, yes, pass me the gun. And so the guy's like makes a quick judgment call. He slides Ryan Reynolds the gun. He picks it up, and then he kills the bad guy. And then he's like, phew, yeah, man, thanks for that. Great work, man. And the guy's just like traumatized witnessing this. Like, I was just like, imagine how he felt going home that day. He was like, I'm a murderer. Like, I just gave that guy the gun to kill this guy. Granted, the other guy was evil, all right? He was the bad guy, okay, in this scenario, okay? He made the right call, but he doesn't know that, you know what I'm saying? So anyways, I just feel like this movie does a perfect job of like balancing or making the romance feel authentic but spontaneous, and then making it feel like intertwined with the characters. Like, it made sense. It's like, yeah, that would make sense for, Darius to be obsessed with love and with Salma Hayek, you know what I mean? Like, that makes sense, it does make sense for them. And it doesn't feel forced, it doesn't feel like, it's just them doing it, under the umbrella of a comedy movie. And it worked fantastic. And it's quite possibly one of my like go-to popcorn movies when it's like, if people ever come around, or like they're kind of like, I want to watch something funny, and I also want to see something that's like action involved in it, I'm like, oh, The Hitman's Bodyguard is perfect. Like, it's like exactly what you want, and the action, while it is absurd, all right, I'm not saying it's like super smart, but I am saying that like compared to movies like the Fast and Furious franchise or like the newest ones, it's like, yeah, this is more realistic than that. You know what I'm saying? So overall, I just want to say, when you're watching The Hitman's Bodyguard, nobody gets out alive, really. Like, nobody gets out alive. And if you know, you know. If you don't, I don't know why you're listening to this. I just spoiled the whole movie, but you get my point. It's just like, this movie, it's a great popcorn film. I can't say that enough. Probably should stop. It's just one of those ones where you just enjoy it. You just have fun with it. You don't try to make it anything more or anything less. The actors do phenomenal, and everything just flows. Everything just works in this movie for me. Obviously it's not perfect, but it's just the nature of the genre, so to speak. I'm trying to think of something that like, it's kind of like, you know what? It's kind of like, if a blockbuster is like fast food, big big burger fast food. Like, it's just like everything you want, like a cheeseburger. It's like a double bacon cheeseburger with just like has everything in there. And then this one's kind of like a gourmet, like a gourmet burger, so to speak. Well, not gourmet, but kind of like a homemade, so to speak. I don't know. I'm trying to make comparisons. It's obviously action comedy, and that's kind of in line with blockbuster, but it's not like on a huge, gigantic scale. It's more small and a lot more character and situational and just a lot more fun, in my opinion. And so that's what gives this movie a top tier popcorn film rating. So when you're watching it, have fun. It is R-rated, so there's a lot of blood, gun, violence, swearing. No crazy like sex or anything. So you're cool on that front. There is a torture scene, but that one they kind of just gloss over that pretty quickly. But and there's also Gary Oldman's character who's like committing genocide in the movie. Well, not genocide, but he's just killing people excessively. So take it for what you will, all right? But in the end, this movie is action packed, it's hilarious, and everybody delivers. They just do. So thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.